Hey everyone, welcome to part 3 of the Texas Bigfoot Sightings review. This is GIS Answers, and we'll be looking at Texas today. Part 3. Where we left off last was we were looking at the Trinity River area, and there was a linear pattern of Site A, Class A sightings along the river. Today, what I did notice was another linear pattern that seemed to follow along this highway between Livingston along Highway 190 to Woodville. So we'll have a look at these points, these Bigfoot sightings, or Class B would be any evidence such as vocalizations, wood knocks, footprints, or structures, or any other feature that could support the fact that there might be Bigfoot. And we'd already looked at point A, the Class A sighting over by Livingston. That was where we finished off. A witness spots a large, dark, hairy creature standing 50 yards away. This was the one that was at the edge of a cemetery. Two young boys and a mom, and they were going to visit a grave there, and they saw this creature at the edge of the cemetery, and it took off into the woods, and they never went back. Anyway, we'll take a look here. This is in Polk County again. This is Polk County, Texas, not Polk County, Florida. Class A sighting, March 2005. Teen has sighting through bedroom window. And we'll be flipping back and forth between the BFRO website with the listings and the accounts. Polk County, March 2005. March 2005, Class A sighting along U.S. Highway 190. This is what happened as told to me by my sister-in-law, who lives with my wife and family. On this night, she had my baby daughter in her room with her on the bed, and she was getting up close to the blinds to the window that she said she could see the stars up in the sky that she had noticed earlier that night. As she got up off the bed, she turned to make sure my niece wasn't going to fall from being close to the edge. When she turned back towards the window, she noticed something looking in from outside. It scared her so much that she grabbed her niece and ran out of the room to tell my mother, who was in one of the other rooms of the house. Her mother then called my place of work to have me come over to the house to take a look around. As I first arrived, I noticed there was some kind of bad odor in the area, but as I kept looking around, along with my co-worker who gave me a ride back to the house, and my mother-in-law on the east side of the house where there is no lights, we heard something stepping on twigs or branches laying on the ground, for snapping and breaking noises. As I attempted to walk towards the noise, whatever there was seemed to move further back into the woods, out of reach of my flashlight. After looking around, we went to ask my sister-in-law if she could say who or what she had seen in the window, or she could say that it was big, black, and hairy, and had something in its eyes. She is really talkative all of the time, but after that, she happened to look like she was in shock. Her face was pale, and her eyes seemed like she was lost. Okay, so somebody saw something in the window, and it was big, black, and hairy, and it took off into the woods. And then there was other witnesses that arrived on the scene to check out the outside of the house, and the creature had made its way away from the house, and they could, it sounded like somebody walking in the woods. Very similar accounts to other accounts I've heard, where you hear something in the woods and it sounds like a bipedal creature walking, and then the smell, the odor of the being too. So quite interesting. So we'll go back to the map. And further down here, there's sighting B. Let's have a look at this Lance Rosier Unit, a national park. Okay, so it's just on the edge, and there's also several watercourses in this area. several rivers around this subdivision off Highway 190. So another one down here is a Class B, March 2005, single car accident in the Big Thicket National Preserve. So this, yeah, this sounds interesting. I wonder what this could be. March 2005. It's in Polk County, Highway 190. In March 2005, at approximately 4:30, as reported by an individual called to the scene as part of an emergency response team, an individual was involved in a single car accident on the highway through the Big Thicket National Preserve. Upon arriving on the scene, the response team found the individual still in the car. The car had apparently rolled and ended up in the woods off the highway. The individual reportedly gained consciousness when the team arrived and began to tell them what happened. The individual remembered seeing a dark, upright figure with long hair standing in the middle of the road. The height of the figure could have been anywhere from 5 feet and 8 feet, and certainly bigger than a child. The individual remembered that the figure was facing the car and standing erect. The individual honked the horn, but the figure did not budge. The individual swerved to miss the figure and came as close as 20 feet before veering off the highway and rolling the car. That is the last thing the individual remembered before crashing. So, basically, there was what they're saying is there was a Bigfoot, potentially a Bigfoot, in the road, and the driver of the car swerved and went off the road. So, further information: the individual remembered the face as being fuzzy. The individual completely ruled out a human as a possibility. The figure was bigger than a child, between 5 and 8 feet tall. It was upright, had long hair like a woman. No clothing could be remembered by the individual. The witness was adamant that the figure was not human, but was completely uncertain what it was. So interesting. So follow along this Highway 190, April 2005 in Tyler County. While biking to work, man hears loud animal in the woods. Maybe that's in Polk County. Let's go back and look at Polk. Yes, it's just on the edge of Polk County and Tyler County. April 2005. Highway 190 East. My husband was on his way to work on his bicycle, and there was a long hill he has to ride after Bear Creek. He heard something with heavy steps coming from the left side of the road. My husband stopped and used his flashlight in that area. When he did that, whatever it was started moving back into the woods, and he could hear branches breaking. My husband said he rode his bike so fast, whatever it was scared him. It happened around 5:30 a.m. It was making grunting sounds. We live around 6 miles from his job. He wanted to leave early enough to get to work. Other stories. Yes, my brother lives nearby, and his nieces have seen the Bigfoot. And my brother said he said the scent it leaves smells so bad. This happens first of spring and late fall. It was foggy, 5:30 a.m., wooded. And then there's one right in Woodville. Looks like the center of town. Let's see about this one. Okay, October 2001 in Woodville. A woman sees a Bigfoot in the backyard. Let's have a look. Zoom right in on the Woodville here. So it looks like East Bluff Street. And can't quite make that street out there. Magnolia, maybe. Looks like in that block, but it's like right in the heart of town. October. That one is Tyler County, no doubt about that. In Woodville, woman sees a Bigfoot in the backyard. I saw a Bigfoot in my backyard. He stood about 7 to 8 feet tall. It weighed about 800 pounds to 1,000 pounds. It was black and hairy all over, smelled worse than a skunk, had arms like an ape. The creature looked prehistoric. It was very shocking to see and watch a Bigfoot. Most recently, a teenage boy saw a Bigfoot in the same Woodville, Texas area. My son has told me one night something that stunk came close to the house by the bedroom where he was sleeping. Whatever it was moaned and groaned, and he could hear it breathing. My son lives in the same house where I saw the Bigfoot. So if we look down at with more detail on the follow-up investigation, prior to her sighting, the witness was not a believer in Bigfoot. Several months before the sighting, the witness and her son had gone out to feed the goats that they raised. They had noticed that the very young goats had started coming up missing. While they were feeding the goats, they heard a low growl behind them. The growl sounded very close, but they could not see anything. Her first thoughts were the growl came from a big cat. The thought of a Bigfoot never crossed her mind. So it's interesting where a lot of these people, these witnesses, either, they're navigating highways or in towns, and this is where they come into contact with Bigfoot. So that was, initially we looked at Sam Houston National Forest, and then the Liberty River Complex, and then we were looking at this cluster along Highway 190. We'll just continue. Let's see if we can find a few more. Looks like a few more about around this park here. Around the Angelina National Forest. Looks like there's a cluster. So Angelina County, August 1979. Man recalls daytime sighting 30 years ago as a seismic hole driller in Angelina National Forest. So we have to go to Angelina County. I was doing seismic drilling in the Angelina National Forest for several weeks. One late afternoon, in an opening, we decided to stop and take a break on the upper end of the open area in the thick woods. It was quiet when I saw something, large and dark and brownish, stand up and walk away from me. It was about 100 yards away. It walked 20 to 50 feet, then descended into the ravine. It looked to go down on all four legs as it went into the ravine, then it was gone. I thought it was a bear, but chances of seeing a bear in 1979 would be slim. This animal walked on two legs. This only lasted for a few seconds, 10 maybe. I turned to my coworker and asked, "Did you see that?" He said, "Yes." And what the bleep was it? I have thought about this for several years, and in my mind's eye, I can still see the animal walking away from me on this day, 30 years later. The forest was unusually quiet. There was another person, 2 witnesses. The other person was Gary Bird of Alabama. We were together, sitting on our machine, smoking a cigarette. It was mid to late afternoon. It was mainly pine forest with wet oak. That's what I've got for part 3, guys, of the southeast portion of Texas, with some fantastic sightings. Please subscribe to the channel, and I'll continue to do more of the mapping and the encounters.